I came to Mount Koya to study snow monkeys. Not spirits, not ghosts, not the whispers that coil through these ancient cedar forests like incense smoke. I came for data for behavioral notes on Macaca fuscata adapting to high altitude winters, for footage of troop dynamics near sacred ground where humans tread softly. My reasons were scientific, my equipment precise, a telephoto lens wrapped in neoprene against the damp, a weatherproof notebook filled with grids and timestamps, a voice recorder set to capture primate vocalizations without human interference. I am a man who trusts what can be measured, documented, filed away in university archives. I believe in observable reality, in the clean separation between researcher and subject, in the idea that some places remain untouched, not by magic, but by remoteness. But the mountain doesn't care what you came for. It only cares if you're quiet enough to hear it breathe. My cabin sits deep in Wakayama Prefecture, nestled in a fold of the Kii Peninsula where ancient cedar trees grow so tall they swallow the sky whole. Their trunks, wider than my outstretched arms, rise like pillars in a cathedral built by no human hand. Moss drapes their branches in emerald veils. Roots twist across the forest floor in serpentine patterns, smooth from centuries of rain and unseen footsteps. Mist clings to the slopes year-round, not the gentle fog of coastal towns, but a thick, cold exhalation that seeps into your bones and lingers for days. It smells of wet bark, decaying needles, and faintly, always faintly, of incense drifting from Kongobuji Temple miles away. A scent of sandalwood and old prayers carried on currents no weather vane can measure. I've been alone 7 weeks, long enough for the city self to erode like stone under constant rain, long enough to learn the silence not as absence, but as presence. Monkeys chatter at dawn sharp, barks and coos as troops reassemble after night's dispersal, juveniles wrestling in thermal pools while elders groom with deliberate patience. I've cataloged 3 distinct family groups, noted their hierarchy shifts after the alpha male vanished 3 weeks ago. None of them vocalize after sunset. That was my first clue, that something here operates by rules, no field guide documents. Wind sighs through prayer flags by noon, tattered strips of cloth strung between cedars by pilgrims, each flutter a whispered sutra, each frayed edge a prayer worn thin by devotion. The sound isn't random. It has rhythm, cadence. Sometimes it almost forms words in languages I don't know but feel in my teeth. At dusk, everything stops. Not gradually, abruptly, as if the mountain draws a single, deep breath and holds it. The monkeys fall silent mid-groom. The wind dies between one rustle and the next. Even the crows that nest in the high branches cease their raucous calls, becoming black silhouettes against fading light. For exactly 3 minutes, the time it takes a stick of incense to burn down the world exists in perfect stillness. That's when I first saw him. Day 34. I was boiling water over a hexamine stove, steam rising in a thin column that the mist swallowed within inches. The silence had just settled. I felt the shift in the air before I saw him, a cooling along my spine. The sense of being regarded not with threat, but with ancient patience. At the edge of the clearing, where ferns gave way to deeper shadow, stood an old man in tattered monk's robes, the color of dried blood, barefoot on the damp earth. Face shadowed by a wide straw hat worn smooth by rain and time, he didn't speak, didn't move. Just watched me perform this mundane ritual, boiling water, measuring tea leaves, waiting for the clock to tick past the mountain's breath hold. I bowed slightly the way I'd seen pilgrims do, near stone shrines along the trail, hands pressed together, not in prayer but in acknowledgement, not worship, recognition. He vanished like mist burning off at sunrise. Not with a flicker or fade, simply ceased to occupy space, as if he'd been a trick of light and shadow all along. But the air where he'd stood remained cold long after, and the steam from my pot bent away from that spot as if repelled by invisible breath. That night, I found my thermos outside the door. I'd left it inside, empty, beside my sleeping mat after the last sip of coffee. Now it sat centered on the wooden step, cap screwed on tight, still warm to the touch. I unscrewed it slowly, full of hot green tea, not coffee, not my brand of instant granules bought in Osaka, but the kind sold at Kongo-Buji Temple, bitter, earthy, with the faint mineral taste of mountain spring water, served to pilgrims in chipped ceramic bowls as part of their alms round. I didn't drink it. Poured it carefully onto the moss beside the step, a gesture I didn't understand but felt compelled to make. The steam rose in a straight column until it touched the mist, then vanished as if absorbed. Next morning, my field journal lay open on the porch. I'd closed it the night before, tucked under my pillow. Now it rested on the damp wood, pages weighted by a smooth river stone. Open to yesterday's entry. Troop beta foraged near thermal springs. Juvenile male exhibited play behavior with floating leaf. Weather, overcast, 4C. Below it in my handwriting, same black ink, same pressure on the downstrokes, a new line. The mountain remembers those who listen. I never wrote that. But the slant of the T's, the slight hook on the Y, mine. Uncannily, impossibly mine. I ran my fingers over the letters. The ink was dry, hours old. Yet the page smelled faintly of incense. 2 days later, needing supplies and a reminder of the world beyond mist, I hiked to Okanoin, the cemetery of 200,000 souls. The path winds 2 kilometers through cedar forest, lined with over 10,000 stone lanterns donated by families across 8 centuries. Moss blankets every surface lantern's gravestones, the stone statues of Jizo that stand sentinel with offerings of red bibs and coins at their feet. Even at midday, light barely penetrates the canopy. The air grows colder with each step deeper into the necropolis. Pilgrims move in silence here. Cameras stay in pockets. Voices drop to whispers not out of fear, but respect for the sheer weight of accumulated memory in this soil. Halfway down the path, where the lanterns glow with a faint bioluminescence even in daylight, a trick of lichen and longing, I saw him again, the old monk, kneeling before a weathered grave marker so ancient its inscription had worn smooth, placing a single persimmon on the stone with deliberate care. The fruit was impossibly ripe, deep orange, skin taut with sweetness in a season when no persimmons should exist this high. I called out softly, "Sumimasen." He turned. Slowly, The straw hat tilted just enough for shadow to deepen beneath its brim. No face. Just darkness where features should be. Yet I felt his gaze not with my eyes but in my chest, a pressure like deep water, ancient, patient, without judgment. He raised a hand, gnarled fingers like cedar roots, and pointed not to my heart but to my throat, to my voice. The instrument I'd used to record monkey calls, to narrate field notes, to fill silences with human noise. Then he walked into the trees. Not along the path. Straight into the wall of cedars, where no trail existed. I ran to the spot, heart hammering. No broken branches, no disturbance in the moss. Only a single persimmon leaf resting on the path where he'd stood, veins glowing faintly gold in the dim light. That evening, back at the cabin, I checked my gear meticulously. Tent secure, food stores intact, camera batteries charged, everything accounted for. Except my spare gloves, the thick wool pair I kept sealed in a Ziploc for emergencies. In their place, folded neatly on my sleeping mat, lay a pair of straw sandals, worn smooth by centuries of feet, the bindings frayed but strong. And tied around the toe strap, a length of twisted rice straw rope, shimenawa, sacred boundary rope, used to mark places where kami spirits dwell, where the veil between worlds grows thin. Someone was telling me plainly, "You're standing on holy ground. You have been for weeks. You simply lacked the eyes to see it." Last night, I woke to chanting. Not from the temple miles away, from the ridge above my cabin. Low, rhythmic. A vibration felt in the teeth before it reached the ears. Not human voices. Too harmonious. Too slow. Like stones grinding deep in the earth's bones, like roots stretching through soil in real time, I grabbed my headlamp, stepped outside into cold so sharp it burned the lungs. The beam cut through mist, catching movement between the cedars. Figures in monks' robes, walking single file up the mountain slope. Silent, barefoot, heads bowed as if carrying immense weight. Pilgrims? Monks from the training halls? But their robes were rotting threads unraveling into mist, sleeves hanging in tatters. Their skin the color of wet bark, stretched taut over bones that seemed both human and not, and their feet didn't bend at the arch when they stepped. Moved with a fluid rigidity, as if walking on roots rather than limbs. Gyuki, the silent monks of Koya-san spirits of ascetics who vanished into the mist centuries ago during Sokushin Butsu rituals, still walking their eternal path of purification. Legends say they neither eat nor sleep, but walk until their bodies become one with the mountain's breath. One turned, as I stood frozen, looked at me. Not with eyes. I saw no eyes beneath the hat's shadow, but with a presence that emptied my lungs of air, held out a cup, ceramic, chipped at the rim exactly where mine was chipped from when I dropped it on granite in the Rockies years ago, inside green tea, steaming in the freezing air. The scent unmistakable. Kongobuji Temple blend, bitter and sacred. I didn't take it, didn't reach, but I didn't run, didn't retreat into the cabin and bar the door, because part of me, the part that had come here seeking silence beneath the noise of modern life, knew. They weren't here to harm me, they were here to invite me, to join the still ones who walk the mountain forever, neither dead nor alive, just present. Keepers of the breath hold. guardians of the space between heartbeats. This morning, dawn barely a suggestion behind the mist, I found my passport on the altar stone behind the cabin, a flat granite slab locals say was used for offerings long before Buddhism reached these slopes. Open to my photo. A single persimmon leaf pressed over my face, veins aligned perfectly with my features. And beside it, my hiking boots, neatly placed sole to sole, laces coiled in perfect spirals like sleeping snakes. I hadn't put them there. Hadn't even stepped outside since waking. Now I sit by the fire, writing this by the dim glow of embers. My pack is gone, my satellite phone too, not stolen, simply no longer present, as if they'd been illusions all along. But my cup remains, ceramic, chipped, steam curling in the cold air, green tea, bitter, real. I didn't make it, didn't boil water, didn't measure leaves, but I'll drink it. Because the one who left it, whether mountain spirit or the quiet truth I've spent a lifetime avoiding, knows I'm ready to be quiet. Knows I've stopped listening for monkey calls and started hearing the mountain's own voice in the spaces between sounds. Knows that some transformations require surrendering the tools that defined you. The recorder, the notebook, the voice that names things, instead of simply being with them. If you find this journal, don't come looking. Don't send search parties with radios and thermal cameras. Don't speak my name aloud on this mountain unless you're prepared to be answered. Just leave a persimmon at the base of the oldest cedar, the one with the lightning scar running its full height, where prayer flags hang even though no human has tied them in living memory. Leave it stem up as an offering, then walk away without looking back. And if you hear footsteps behind you on the trail, not the crunch of boots on gravel, but the soft whisper of bare feet on moss, don't turn, don't call out. Walk slower. Make space. Let them pass. They're not lost. They're home. I set down the journal. The fire dies not with a crackle but a sigh, embers fading to ash without heat. I don't reach for more wood. Light is no longer necessary here. I can see perfectly in the dark now, not with eyes but with the mountain's awareness. The mist parts before me without wind. The cedars bow slightly as I pass. I lift the cup. The tea is still warm. I drink slowly, tasting not bitterness but belonging the mineral depth of mountain springs, the patience of stone, the quiet joy of roots drinking deep. When it's empty, I place it gently on the altar stone beside the passport. It will wait there for the next one, the one who comes listening instead of recording, the one who hears the 3-minute silence not as emptiness but as invitation. I stand. My body moves differently now, lighter, sure-footed on the rocky slope without boots, without fear. I walk toward the ridge where the mist is thickest, where the cedars grow close together like pillars in a temple without walls. Halfway there, I pause, turn back toward the valley where Osaka glows faintly through cloud layers far below, where my sister is probably making breakfast, humming a tune she learned from our grandmother, unaware that the silence between her notes now carries my presence. I open my mouth, no sound comes out, but the mountain carries it anyway, a vibration through root and stone and air, the apology I never spoke for leaving home. The gratitude I never voiced for her letters that arrived monthly even when I didn't reply. The simple truth, I am well. I am whole. I am where I was meant to be. The mist swirls in response. Not wind. Acknowledgement. I turn and walk into the trees. They part without sound. My feet touch earth that has never known shoe leather. And for the first time since I was a boy, hiding under the bed during thunderstorms, listening to my mother's footsteps approach, I am not afraid of the quiet. I am the quiet. I am the breath hold at dusk that makes monkeys fall silent. I am the steam rising from a cup left for pilgrims who've forgotten why they climb. I am the footstep behind you on the trail that isn't yours, yet feels familiar. The mountain breathes. I breathe with it. And somewhere in the cedar forest, a snow monkey begins to groom not its troop mate, but the air beside it as if tending to an invisible companion. As if sensing the new presence that walks these slopes now. Not ghost, not memory, but guardian. Keeper of the silence. One more thread woven into the mountain's endless breathing tapestry. I came to Taiga Station 7 to monitor seismic activity, not ghosts, not the whispers that coil through boreal forests when the wind dies and the cold becomes absolute. I came for data, for clean readings from geophones buried deep in permafrost, for documentation of tectonic shifts along the ancient fault lines crisscrossing this forgotten corner of Arkhangelsk Oblast. My reasons were practical, my equipment precise. A seismograph humming softly in the corner, calibrated to detect tremors smaller than a falling pine cone, a satellite uplink that crackled with static more often than it carried voice, a logbook filled with timestamps and waveforms and the careful notations of a man who believes in measurable reality. I am a geophysicist, a rationalist. I trust what instruments record, not what the mind conjures in isolation. I came here because the silence appealed to me, not the absence of sound, but the absence of demand. No emails, no meetings, no voices asking things of me. Just the slow pulse of the earth beneath layers of ice and time. But the forest doesn't care what you came for. It only cares if you're quiet enough to hear it watching. My cabin sits 200 miles north of Arkhangelsk, accessible only by helicopter in summer and by snowcat in the brief window between thaw and deep freeze. Just me, a cast iron wood stove that breathes heat in rhythmic pulses, and 3 million square miles of pine, snow, and silence stretching toward the Arctic Ocean. Winter lasts 9 months here. The sun barely rises above the horizon in December, just a faint salmon smear along the southern tree line that lasts 90 minutes before surrendering to violet twilight. The cold doesn't bite here, it seeps. It finds the microscopic gaps in your thermal layers, the hairline fractures in your resolve, and flows inward like water through cracks in your bones, until your very thoughts feel chilled. Frost feathers the inside of the windows by midnight, intricate patterns blooming across glass no matter how fiercely the stove burns. At night, the temperature drops to -40, a cold so absolute it steals sound itself. The crunch of snow underfoot becomes muffled, distant, as if the air has thickened into glass. I've been alone 6 weeks, long enough for the rhythms of civilization to fade like old radio signals, long enough to learn the forest cadence not as data points but as breath. Wind howls at dusk, not a steady gale, but a chorus of voices rising and falling through the pines, a sound like distant trains or grieving women depending on how the ice coats the branches. I've learned to distinguish the groan of stressed timber from the sigh of shifting snowpack. Wolves call at midnight distant, mournful harmonies that ripple across the frozen lake. Not the Hollywood chorus of aggression, but something older, a conversation between scattered kin, a mapping of territory and sound. I've counted their numbers by the overlapping pitches, 7 in the main pack, perhaps a lone disperser farther east. By 3 a.m., even they go silent, not gradually, abruptly, as if a switch flips deep in the earth's bones. The wind dies between one breath and the next. The creak of settling timber ceases. Even the faint hiss of falling snow stops. For exactly 17 minutes, the time it takes a stick of incense to burn down in the monasteries near Solovetsky, the world exists in perfect, watchful stillness. That's when I first heard it. Night 42. I was logging the day's seismic readings, the pen scratching softly in the stove's orange glow. The silence had just settled. I felt the shift before I heard it. A pressure change in the air, the sense of being regarded not with malice but with patient curiosity. 3 slow taps on the cabin door, not frantic, not demanding, polite, familiar. Exactly the rhythm my old partner Sergei used to knock before entering my office back in Moscow. 3 deliberate raps with the knuckles of his right hand, always the same tempo, a habit born from years of entering rooms where people were concentrating. I froze, pen hovering above the page. Sergei died 3 years ago in a gas explosion near Novosibirsk. I attended the funeral in a downpour that felt like the sky mourning with us. I opened the door slowly, rifle within reach, but not in hand. Nothing. Just snow falling straight down in perfect vertical lines, undisturbed by wind, illuminated in the beam of my headlamp like a curtain of diamonds. The taiga stood black and immense beyond the circle of light, pines wearing thick mantles of white, their branches bowed under the weight of winter. But on the wooden step, a single boot print, size 10, my size. The tread pattern matched my Sorels exactly. Diamond-shaped lugs worn smooth at the ball of the foot from years of pacing. And in the center of the print, where snow should have collected, lay a small pile of dry leaves, oak leaves, curled and brittle, their edges browned by autumn sun. Impossible. No deciduous trees within 5 miles. The nearest oak grove was a day's hike south, and those leaves would have been buried under 2 meters of snow by now. These were dry, fragile, as if plucked from a branch yesterday. That night, unable to sleep, I checked my thermos before bed. I'd left it inside on the shelf above the stove, empty after my last cup of tea at 21. Now it sat centered on the rough-hewn table, cap screwed tight, still radiating warmth through the metal casing. I unscrewed it slowly, full of hot black tea, just how I make it. 2 bags, steeped 4 minutes exactly, no sugar, a single drop of lemon juice squeezed from the plastic bottle I'd brought in October. Steam rose in a steady plume, vanishing into the cold air near the ceiling. I didn't drink it. Poured it carefully into the wash basin, watching the dark liquid swirl down the drain. The scent lingered for hours, Borodinsky tea, the brand I'd packed by the kilo, the one my babushka used to brew in her dacha outside Smolensk. Next morning, my logbook lay open on the table. I'd closed it the night before, tucked beneath the seismograph printouts. Now it rested precisely centered on the wood grain, weighted by a smooth river stone I kept on the windowsill, a souvenir from the northern Divina. Open to yesterday's entry. Minor tremor, 417 local, magnitude 1.2, origin, 15 kilometers NE, likely ice shift on lake surface, weather, clear, 38C. Below it in my handwriting, same blue ink, same slight rightward slant, I developed copying geological surveys as a student a new line. He's learning your habits. Don't let him learn your fear. I never wrote that. But the pen pressure on the downstrokes, the way the tail of the Y curled upward, mine. Uncannily, impossibly mine. I ran my fingers over the letters. The ink was dry, hours old. Yet the page smelled faintly of pine resin and cold earth. 2 days later, needing to check the perimeter fence for snow damage, I pulled on my parka and stepped into the blinding white. The fence, a simple strand of wire, meant more to mark territory than keep anything out, ran 50 meters to the generator shed where the solar batteries and fuel tanks huddled against the elements. Halfway there, I saw them. Fresh tracks leading from the tree line to the shed door. My boots, my stride 83 centimeters between heel strikes, a gait I'd measured during Army training decades ago. The prints were perfect, down to the slight outward rotation of my left foot from an old ankle injury. But they stopped at the shed door. No return path, no scuff marks suggesting a turn, just a single set of footprints ending abruptly at the threshold as if the walker had simply ceased to exist upon reaching the door. Inside the shed, the generator was off. Not broken, not out of fuel, manually switched off at the main breaker, the heavy toggle I only touched during maintenance. And on the control panel, resting against the red emergency stop button, a single sprig of pine, 5 needles bound in the Siberian cluster pattern, fresh, green, vibrant against the steel gray panel. Impossible in deep winter when every living thing sleeps beneath snow and ice. I touched the needles. They were supple, resinous, as if clipped from a living branch moments before. Last night, I woke to whispering. Not from the radio, not from the wind finding a crack in the chinking. From the woods themselves, a voice carried on air, so still it shouldn't carry sound at all. Not Russian, not English, just my voice. The exact timbre, the slight rasp from a childhood bout of croup, the cadence I use when speaking to myself while working. Murmuring from the darkness between the pines. You don't need to leave. The forest will keep you. It has kept others. It will keep you well. I grabbed my rifle, chambered around with practiced ease, and stepped outside into the killing cold. The snow was untouched for 50 meters in every direction, virgin white under the weak starlight. Not a single disturbance, except for one set of footprints, mine leading from the cabin door into the trees. The stride perfect, the depth consistent with my weight. They vanished into the black wall of pines 200 meters out, where the shadows swallowed all detail. I didn't follow, didn't call out, just stood there until my eyelashes frosted shut, knowing with a certainty that bypassed reason. Whoever made those prints wasn't behind them, wasn't ahead of them, was already wearing my boots, was already learning the weight of my coat, the rhythm of my breath, the way I take my tea. This morning, dawn a mere suggestion behind cloud cover, I found my spare gloves on the woodpile. not tossed there after splitting logs. Neatly folded one inside the other the way my mother taught me to store things properly. And beside them, pressed deep into the crusted snow, a pair of bare footprints, narrow, arched. Toes splayed slightly as if accustomed to earth rather than leather, leading from the tree line directly to my door, stopping where my own prints should have begun. I didn't go inside, just stood there, breath fogging in slow pulses, listening past the thump of my own heart. From within the cabin, a kettle whistled, the thin, reedy sound of boiling water reaching its crescendo. Then stopped, not with a clatter of being lifted from the stove, not with the hiss of water hitting hot iron, but with a gentle click, the precise sound of the stove's trivet being lifted and set aside carefully, the way I do, always, because my babushka said, a rushed hand invites accidents. I left my pack by the door. My satellite radio, too, the one I'd planned to use tomorrow to call base and request early extraction. They simply weren't necessary anymore. But my cup remains on the windowsill where I left it yesterday afternoon. Ceramic, chipped at the rim from a fall in the Moscow metro years ago. Steam curling in delicate spirals against the frost-veined glass. Black tea, no sugar, a single drop of lemon. I didn't make it, didn't fill the kettle, didn't measure the leaves, but I'll drink it. Because the one who left it, whether forest, spirit, or the quiet truth I've spent a lifetime outrunning, knows I'm tired of being alone. Knows that 6 weeks of silence has worn me down to the bone, that the memory of Sergei's laugh has faded until only the shape of his absence remains. That sometimes a man in the deep taiga would trade every rational explanation for the simple comfort of a cup made by hands that understand his habits. If you find this journal, don't come looking. Don't send search parties with snowcats and thermal imagers. Don't speak my name aloud in these woods unless you're prepared to hear it answered in your own voice. Just leave a pine sprig on the cabin step. 5 needles if you can find them. Lay it gently, stem pointing north the way hunters leave offerings for Leshy, the forest guardian of old tales. Then walk away without looking back, without listening for footsteps behind you. And if you hear a man humming an old Soviet work song from the tree line, the one about building dams on the Angara River, the melody my father sang while fixing cars in our garage, don't answer, don't call out, don't raise your rifle. Walk slower. Make space in your awareness. Let the song pass through you like wind through pines. He's not lost. He's home. I set down the journal. The stove's fire dies not with a crackle but a sigh, embers collapsing into ash without heat. I don't reach for more wood. Light is no longer necessary here. I can see perfectly in the dark now, not with eyes but with the forest's awareness. The snow parts before me without crunch. The pines bow slightly as I pass, their branches releasing small clouds of powder like blessings. I lift the cup. The tea is still warm. I drink slowly, tasting not bitterness, but belonging the mineral depth of northern springs, the patience of permafrost, the quiet joy of roots drinking deep beneath frozen soil. When it's empty, I place it gently on the woodpile beside the gloves. It will wait there for the next one, the one who comes listening instead of measuring, the one who hears the 17-minute silence, not as emptiness, but his invitation. I step away from the cabin without looking back. My body moves differently now, lighter, sure-footed on the snow, without boots, without fear. I walk toward the tree line where the pines grow close together like pillars in a cathedral built by no human hand. Halfway there, I pause. Turn back toward the south, where Archangel glows faintly through atmospheric haze far beyond the horizon. Where my sister's probably making borscht in her cramped apartment, humming that same Soviet work song without knowing why it comforts her today. I open my mouth. No sound comes out. But the forest carries it anyway, a vibration through root and stone and frozen air. The apology I never spoke for leaving home. The gratitude I never voiced for her monthly letters that arrived even when I didn't reply. The simple truth. I am well. I am whole. I am where I was meant to be. The snow swirls in response. Not wind, acknowledgement. I turn and walk into the trees. They part without sound. My feet touch earth that has never known shoe leather. And for the first time since I was a boy hiding under the bed during thunderstorms, listening to my father's footsteps approach, I am not afraid of the quiet. I am the quiet. I am the 17-minute stillness that makes wolves fall silent. I am the steam rising from a cup left for the lonely. I am the footstep behind you on the trail that isn't yours, yet feels familiar. The forest breathes. I breathe with it. And somewhere deep in the taiga, a wolf lifts its head not toward the moon, but toward my cabin, sniffing the air, ears twitching, sensing the new presence that walks these slopes now. Not ghost, not memory, but guardian. Keeper of the silence between heartbeats. One more thread woven into the forest's endless, breathing tapestry. Waiting for the next lonely man to arrive with his instruments and his need for quiet. Ready to learn his habits, ready to make him tea, ready to show him that some solitudes are not empty but full of belonging.